Hi, guys. Welcome back to My Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today is another cool day for an interview. And I know I say that every single time I do an interview because I'm so excited about meeting new people from around the world who are like me, searching for the true meaning of life. I know it sounds corny, but we are all searching for a way forward, for our path in order to become better human beings. And many of us try to do that from a psychological point of view. We learn mindfulness, we learn all kinds of things. But if I was to tell you that there is actually a way that we also can be the best human beings on a biological level, and if I was to tell you that there are people out there who actually have figured out that we can turn back the wheels of time, at least in our body. We can't do it really, but in time sense. But how would it be to be a younger and better person, a younger and better version of yourself? I would like that. And today I've got Julian Hayes with me. Julian Hayes is an atelier who is a biohacker, a man who is looking deep into the human body and is actually trying to figure out, ways, how can we make this body work for us in such a way that it brings a big smile on our face. So Julian, welcome to my show.
And that was an awesome introduction. That was really awesome. So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm, just ready to talk it up, man. Thank you so much.
Mm. And it is so beautiful, isn't it? When you stop taking your body for granted and actually develop a love affair with your body. Love affair. Can you remember when you were in love the first time? God, you were so fascinated. You looked the other person into the eyes and you noticed every little speckle. You noticed every little thing, how the hair glistens in the sun. And you notice everything. Fast forward 20 years now that you're married. Well, it's maybe no longer paying so much attention. And that's I think our problem, isn't it? We have forgotten to listen to our body and learn about our body and take care of our body. Would you agree there, Julian?
Yeah, you bring up a point there as you talked about romance here. I might need to write a book called Love and Fitness or something, because there is a lot of parallels between that.
Is it not? Is it not?
Yeah, love and fitness. Yeah, I'm still much at the early stage, so I'm definitely looking for the infatuation, looking for the misses out there. So, but I do remember being infatuated and just remembering every little detail and just not taking none of those things for granted. And that's kind of how the way the human body is that one thing is connected to another, just like in our relationships. How we talk to each other is going to affect our mood, our feelings, which is then going to lead to how we go about out in the world and how we treat other people. And it's the same thing with our body. How we eat, how we think, or how we eat is going to lead to basically how our brain is going to operate, which is then going to lead to how are we going to perform? How are we going to do our jobs? How are we going to communicate? So that's a very good point. Love and fitness.
You heard it first on my show here. Come on to my show. We are brainstorming. And that is the cool thing. Hey, because we are no longer taking things for granted. Those people that you hear on my show, including myself, we are willing to make changes. We are willing to adapt. We are willing to rethink our lives, because many of us have been in the darkness. Many of us have been in places that we don't wish upon our worst enemy. Yet it has happened. Life has happened to us. But those of us who have learned to transform are now at a point to say, wow, we've gone through so much shit. Is that really it? And we might as well talk about it and go out there and change this world. powerful position to be in.
Yeah,
Julian, how did you come to your position? I guess you didn't wake up one day as a 6-year-old and say, hey, I'm going to be a biohacker. I'm going to be an atelier. How did you get into that?
No, I think with just this infatuation with health is because of, once again, how we grow up. And so I saw a lot of struggle. I thought of when you turn 30 or get past 30, that it goes downhill from there. Your health goes downhill from there, because that was my current paradigm. That's what I saw. I had a father who dealt with diabetes, amputations, dialysis. I have aunts and uncles in the same thing. And so that really leaves a mark on you. You don't even realize it at first when you're young, but then you think about it and you realize it's like, why am I so adamant about this? And it's because I appreciate and I know how fragile life is. And I know that no one's immune to these things happening. It's not to scare anyone, but it's just to have an appreciation that no one is better or too good to have these things happen to them. And so in college, it was more of a personal transformation. It was much more of a superficial thing where I wanted to look good to impress women and to have confidence. I was a very skinny kid. That was my main thing. Now, this is another story. Most women don't care when you're just super huge and jacked and everything, because it's still, if you're still insecure, you're insecure no matter if you have 20 extra pounds of muscle or not. That's another story, a whole other day, right? Now, but that led me to medical school after. So I decided to go to medical school. I was in New York, and I'm from Nashville, Tennessee. So for those not familiar, Nashville, Tennessee is deep South. New York is, everybody knows where New York is. Two totally different environments, right? So I go up there and I started to slowly realize that I have this love for health, but I don't really necessarily have the love for medicine and being a doctor. And I met so many interesting people during that time that had these different hopes and dreams, and they were combining their passion with a way to live. And I was like, damn, I'm not doing this. I'm in the wrong thing. I need to go ahead and cut my losses right now. And it's not really a loss, because it's better to cut a loss after 1 year compared to maybe 15 years down the line. And you're just got all this resentment built up in you of what you should have done and all this stuff. So that leads me to not go back to medical school, still find my way. And I start off as personal trainer, start off as like a health coach, the typical things. I'm a natural curious guy. And one of my limits is, how good can you get? And that's what I always ask myself. And so I started researching about genetics, epigenetics, because I was curious that all these things happen in my family, but other families, it doesn't. It seems for some families, they have maybe more cognitive issues. Whereas in my family, cognitive issues wasn't really an issue. It was more the blood sugar issues, the diabetes. And I find mentors for that. And I just keep trying things, doing things, and you just end up at places, right? It's like I have a vision for where I want to go, but I'm going to be malleable on the details that get me there. And even still to this day, I'm still evolving, even with my messaging, even with who I'm serving. Everything is constantly evolving and dynamically interacting. And that's kind of how the human body is. You're constantly interacting with your environment every day, and you are turning on and off certain genes and expressing it as well.
And you're so right. It's lovely how you put that, because there are certain parameters that are, or certain lands in the sand, let's call them. They are laid down long before our birth. There is genetics at play, because some families, we all have got Achilles heels. For some families, you mentioned it, diabetes runs strong within the families. In other people, it's maybe their lungs are not so good, or ischemic heart disease comes out very early in their life. So these are the things that we can't do anything about. Having said that, it's one thing to have a genetic predisposition for something. It's another thing to then walk the same path that our elders did and repeat the same mistakes they did. They did it because they didn't know better, because medicine often didn't know better. Camel is the cigarette that every doctor smokes. These were advertisements. what, in the 50s, 60s, that shit. And truly, we didn't know much better. Nowadays we do. Okay, so therefore it is actually, yes, it's all quite nice that you're in a family of either addicts or diabetics, etc. No, let's talk a bit more about, can you actually change that? Mm-hmm. So there you are. Is it a fait accompli? Is it damn, you have got those genes, therefore you gotta rot away with diabetes?
Huh? No, of course not. No, it's not. And thankfully so. I like to look at genetics and genes as it just offers us clues on where we came from. It's just the clues for who you are or who you were and where you came from in the past. But this thing called epigenetics, this is what we can truly mold our future on. If you think about it, genetics is the gun, but the epigenetics pool is the actual trigger. And what I mean by that is when you hear the word epi, it means above, and add genetics to it, it means above the gene. And so if we think about this, think of our bodies much like a computer, whereas you have the hardware, but then we have this software, and this software is adding different informational inputs into the system, into the hardware there. And that is ultimately telling it what to do and how to perform. And it's the same thing with our bodies. As I mentioned, how we eat, but also how we think, how we love, how we breathe, how we exercise, how we sleep, our vocation, all these things add up and are communicating with our body on a cellular level and telling certain genes to turn on, to turn off, to express, to not express itself. And so genetics maybe plays maybe a 10% thing, maybe 10%, but there's no absolutes with it. So just because I have the gene doesn't mean it's going to express. Now, it's a propensity. So yes, if I don't do certain things with my lifestyle, there's a higher propensity that some of the things that are most likely to express itself more quickly for me would be more blood sugar dysregularities. Or whereas for somebody else, maybe it's going to be more inflammation. Maybe it's going to be more cognitive impairment. But that's just the propensity for it. And that's and not to go on a different rant here, but this is the thing to keep in mind, that when you do, direct to consumer tests are becoming more and more accessible to people. So you can get these genetic tests and you might see, this thing says X and X for me, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. And I really want people to keep that in mind. And this is when you start bringing into things such as your lab testing. When you go to your doctor, or if you're working with someone, you have your lab testing as well to see, okay, I might have these certain propensities and SNPs in my DNA, but is it actually expressing? So let me see what my blood work is showing as well. And this gets us into what I call a systems mentality. A lot of times in medicine now, at least here in the States, it exists in silos. We address, if you have a stomach issue, I'm just looking at the stomach. I'm not thinking about the brain. I'm not thinking about anything else. Everything exists in a silo, and it's a vacuum. Whereas I want people to think about everything's connected. If you have anxiety issues, depression, sometimes a lot of that can be from your gut. Of course, it can be some things in life, but it can also be your gut and it being off in terms of the bacteria in there as well.
You're so true. Yeah, 100% every single word you're saying, I second. And it is often the outcomes I see as a doctor, as an anesthetist. Yesterday, I worked with a gynecologist. So we actually did operations on young women, mainly, just by the stroke of luck. And 3 out of those 4 young women had anxiety disorder, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, and often very poor skin. And you think, yeah, right, as if your nutrition had nothing to do with all that. Exactly. You just look at this combination of things, and that inflammation is rip-roaring through that system. And the question is, damn, why has no one ever focused on a more holistic approach to this woman's problem? And it is what it is. It is this dysfunctional medicine that you're alluding to, this kind of looking holistically at a whole person, is still in its infancy. there are people out there who use words, but often enough it's a bit lip service. We know what we ought to do, but in reality, can't be that easy, kind of a thing. Yeah, so it's weird. So you're so right. 100% agree. How did you make that change? What was your journey to become this atelier? Because you figured out, okay, hang on, looking around your family, damn, I'm on a slippery slope there. If I don't get my shit together, then I'm going to end up like my relatives.
Yeah.
What changed?
That was a little bit of it, but I think at the beginning of my journey, I was running away from something. And I was running away from disease and illness and all those things. And I don't think that's the most empowering thing, but now I'm running towards something now. That was one of my, it's a very subtle shift.
No, that's a huge shift. Okay. Yeah. Now you're no longer driven by fear. You're driven by desire. Man, that's power.
And I just thought there's more. These things just come. For whatever reason, I just think that there's more that I can get out. And I knew I could do more. And I just started researching and just reading different things. And I'm never afraid to just email someone or just even message someone that I'm just curious about and say, I'm curious about this. Yeah. And you just learn from them. And I thought with myself, and then I kind of always think that, where's the future going? But then again, I can actually start to mold my future, because if I don't control my reality, then reality will control me. So I need to first control my reality. And so why don't I be part of it? And I started with myself. And I think all great things, all local movements, any type of movement starts with just yourself and really embodying that which you would like to see in the world. And so I just added these things. And the atelier part became because people would ask, what do you do? And I'm not a personal trainer, really. I'm not a fitness trainer anymore. Not really a health coach, because and you can get a weekend certification being a health coach. And there's some great health coaches out there. And I was talking to a marketing guy, right? And because I had a hard time explaining what I do, because I incorporate all these things. I basically look at things like a CEO looks at a company, and you take it into account, and that's how the body is. And so I'm given this long diatribe answer. He's like, you're an atelier. And I was like, what? What is that? I couldn't even pronounce it. And I looked it up. It's like, it's a workshop. It's a workshop that like a lot of artists in France use. And I was like, oh, he's like, you're atelier, and the human body, that is your workshop. And he put it, I'm trying to talk like very proper like him, right? He's English, I believe. And and I was like, oh, okay, I like that. And no one uses, the word atelier. And it's like, it's a great conversation starter as well. But it actually does make sense, because this is a workshop. Because you're not, when you're training your body, you're training your mind. And when you're training your mind, you're training your body. So you're all doing these things. And I wanted a world, and even in my philosophy, where everything is being trained and everything is being accounted for, because everything is connected. And I don't want just good health. I don't even want optimal health. I want enhancement. That's my vision, is enhancement. Now we're a long way away from that, and we're in the early stages, but you go big or go home. And I just never understood. I just think that, the average life expectancy is 77. And I'm just like, we can at least have everyone be 100. And I think that's one of my things, is the minimum age to be 100. And, for me, I'm looking at like 215. And I think about this, the longest living person made it to like 120. So with all the technology and everything, all the knowledge we know, and I even have an uncle that's like 100 now, a 50% increase to 180. I believe in technology a little bit, at least that much. And then I'm just greedy and I want more of it. Right? Because I want 3 centuries to say I lived 3 centuries at least. But the thing is, for me, this is just how I work. And this is one of the key aspects when it comes to optimal health. First and foremost is to know yourself, to know your own psychology. And if I'm not really excited about something, to have something grand, I'm going to get bored in life. And when I get bored, that's usually when I don't do some not so good things. That's usually when I fall into bad patterns. Is from boredom. I think boredom's a very bad thing to fall into. And so that's just how I operate. So that's kind of like my long story about atelier, is that I needed a word to sum up all these various things that I'm interested in and that I do believe lead to someone having optimal and enhanced health. And atelier just sums it up.
Which is beautiful. I like that. And I think as a doctor, I see a lot of disease, and therefore it's very easy to get a skewed perspective on life and say, yeah, right, longevity, my ass, look at what the reality is. But having said that, one of my big things is that the past does not equal the future. So you can make changes. And if you're truly willing to do them and live by them, things can dramatically change. Give you an example. I come from a strong family of history, ischemic heart disease, and also alcohol. So there you go. My father died of his sixth heart attack in his 60s, around about there. So there you go. I thought, wow, great. I'm now 55. My goodness. When is the time? When do I get my first heart attack? So I actually did some testing. So, and to give you another bit of knowledge there, about 5 years ago, I said, well, is that really all? So I started going a bit more to a nutritionist and said, come on, man, let's look at my blood works in depth. Again, parallels there. Look at my blood works, figure out how do I tick from the inside, and then let's make some changes. And since then, every morning I've got basically a handful of nutraceuticals and some very good stuff that I'm taking. And yeah, I thought this is quite good. And it felt good. And it made me be a different person. So tick. But I still thought genetics is there. So we did a heart test. So there was a CT calcium score. CT means that you go through this machine, they slice you in radiology down, and then they look how much crust is in the blood vessels that deliver oxygen to the heart. And when you have got ischemic heart disease, well, that's all tight and narrow and full of pizza lining. I had the coronary arteries of a baby. There was no calcium in my coronaries. With my genes, that's impossible. Yet, I changed my life. I changed everything not everything, but I changed a hell of a lot of things. And suddenly I was able to undo damage that no doubt my lifestyle from drinking and not eating so healthy in the past would have left scars on that heart. And yet there was nothing. Now that was proof to me that you can undo changes. And that's where you come in, Julian. You're saying, why don't we live to 140, 150? And yeah, there are actually ways forward. So I've done it with my heart. What would you say to others? Let's say diabetes, it's such a rampant epidemic out there. How would you look at diabetes from your epigenetic point of view?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first thing, in the past, I guess now I'm a little more wiser in my 30s compared to, at first I would say
wise. I don't know wise with anyone I know. I won't be wise not until I'm under 50.
Yeah. It's like a joke I always like to make, because I have friends who think being in your 30s is old. I'm like, come on, guys, like you're an adolescent, really. We don't know anything. And normally I would just immediately start jumping into like food recommendations and doing these tests and everything. But really, and this is something I thought about with my family, I think the first thing we have to do is dissociate from the thing itself. A lot of times I think we take on the identity of the illness, of the symptom that we have. We become a sick person. And I think we forget the simple thing that words, these affirmations, these words that we speak, they can bring life or death into our tongue by the power of our tongue. And even with my father, I remember he was always saying, I'm tired of being sick. And he didn't know that when you keep saying, I'm tired of this, you're going to get more of that. These things have power. If you see yourself as a sick person, you're going to continually be a sick person because that is what you identify as. And so the first thing is, someone's with diabetes, let's say it's type 2. So type 1's a whole different scenario compared to type 2. So type 2 is typically, for most people, is lifestyle driven, and you can pretty much reverse it, or at least really manage it. So the first thing is to dissociate, like I said, from that identity of that, and to also realize that it's a situation, it's an issue. It's nothing permanent. I remember Michael Jordan and Tim Grover when they were training, and they didn't have problems. They had a situation. So this is just a situation that we can mitigate, right? There's very few things in life that we cannot reverse and take back. Time is one thing that we cannot. So we really got to be afraid of time. That's my opinion. Be really afraid of time, but everything else we can bounce back from, rather from people with sobriety issues, whether it's a business failure, a relationship failure, we can all bounce back for those things. So dissociate from the identity. That's first and foremost, is to really work on their mindset around this. Then we can start to go further into the auditing process and look into how they're living, what they've been doing, and how they even got to the situation. Because it doesn't really matter. I can give you all the gadgets, all the tools, all the biohacks. But if that inside and that mindset is not where it needs to be, then you're not going to receive it. And it's going to be for nil. It's like so many people want a limitless pill, like Julian, what's this nootropic or all these different biohacks, but they're not even doing basic things first. And so that's getting ahead. For all the technology out there, if you don't have the foundation, these things are not going to work. These things only pour further gasoline on the fire that you already have brimming.
100%. Couldn't agree more. But having said that, it is, you don't know what you don't know. So a lot of people out there, they are completely living by social media, by something they hear on the morning television. Everyone is out there for the instant gratification. And I think that is the biggest challenge to our lifestyle now, that we want it now. Bang, give me the tablet. Bang, doctor, make me better. Bang. What do you mean?
That's a hard thing to break, because our world is predicated on it. Look, I still fall into that myself at times, because I think now with social media, it seems like some people have overnight success. It just out of nowhere, right? And
bullshit, absolutely. I call.
And the thing is, we don't see none of the behind the scenes work. We don't see any of that. Even with people who are ultra fit and everything, we don't see the recovery sessions, the sauna sessions. All we see is a fit body, or we see someone that's running really fast, but we don't know all of the nasty stuff. Like, it's lonely. If you're really trying to go after, at times at the very beginning, it's a very lonely process, because, I can speak for myself. I'm the first entrepreneur in my family. Most people in my family, it's work somewhere for 20, 30 years, 40 years, hopefully retire, hopefully have a good health then. And that's a good life. Nothing wrong with that. So it's a very blue collar attitude. And so even my friends, so when you're separating yourself at first, and this same thing goes for your health as well, if everyone's doing these certain behaviors and you're trying to change, it's really hard, because you're breaking from the herd. And there's feelings of loneliness that can come up, of like, man, we all want a sense of belonging. And I totally get that. So, but we don't see that. We don't see that on Instagram. Nobody's going to make a post saying, man, it was really lonely. I was studying during college. I was studying all this health stuff and all these tests and trying all these different things when everyone else was partying, going to frat parties and all this stuff. And I was just sitting in on a Friday night studying and then going to work out on a Saturday. That was part of my life. But you had to think about this as like, pretend you're like your Warren Buffett or Ray Dalio, some great investor. And you have a horizon. And I guess it's kind of applicable now since the stocks are down now, actually. Yeah. So you see companies are down right now. I'll use a popular company like Apple. You see Apple's down right now, right? If you have a 5 to 10 year, even longer horizon, you're not worried because you know things are cyclical and sometimes things go down. But and you know that success is not linear. Wealth is not linear. Health is not linear. There will be some ups and downs, valleys in that. But over the course of time, if you stay the path, that trajectory is still going to go up. But it just might not be like a rocket, like social media will have us do it. You might not have 0 to millions in 6 weeks or lose 30 pounds in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, right?
What do you mean? There's 2 weeks. Do I have to wait this long? No, I want it now.
I mean, I've in the past, I mean, not so much now because it's a different set of person, but in the past, during my earlier days when it was mostly the fitness training, I had people and I lost people where they're like, I had this goal and I was like, oh, okay, well, how long do you want to? Okay, so we got 6 weeks or it's like, we got 12 weeks. Okay, we got 12 weeks. How much are you going to commit to exercising? Do you want to do 2-a-days? This is a very aggressive goal. I was like, you could probably do it, but I'm going to tell you the truth. If you want, like, wait, 2 times a day? And then I can't, no cheat meals and none of that? I was like, yeah, if you want, you know, if you want to condense the window, there's always a price to pay. You know, there's always a cause and effect. And, you know, that's another good point to think about this whole ordeal is that no matter the goal that we go after, there's always a cost and sacrifice that we have to pay in order to get that. And it's wise to actually be sure what we think we want is really what we want and not what we think we should want or not what society thinks that we should want. And even looking a certain way, right? There's nothing wrong with being 9% body fat, and there's nothing wrong with really being 13%. It's 2 totally different things. And I tell people, because I train a lot, I enjoy it though. I literally enjoy it. It's like medicine for me, and it gets off a lot of energy. And a lot of people think, oh man, I would love to have the broad shoulders and the performance that you do. Well, it's like, well, I don't really have time to do a lot of other things. If I'm not working or reading, I'm usually working out or something, right? So I don't really keep up with a lot of shows like you do. So there's always a trade-off. And these are a lot of the things that will get lost, no matter the industry that we're in, whether you're a business coach. We wanted to immediately go to tactics and not think about these other intangible identity forming habits and foundation that needs to be set for all this other stuff to work.
Very nice. Very nice. And it's true though. The question is, how do we change people? How do we change ourselves? What does need to happen that for change to stick? Because how did you manage to do it? And why do other people struggle?
I think unfortunately, I think at least for me, pain is our greatest teacher, and pain's going to appear different. Unfortunately, you would have people, you have different, I call them elders, that would tell you the things to look out for, even in like business. But when you're young and naive and you think you're invincible, you don't really listen. And so sometimes you just have to put your hand on the stove and experience it for yourself to really grasp the lesson. I hate that, but a lot of times there's usually some type of jarring event is going to snap us out of like the days or the malaise that we go through our days, because it's very easy to get in a routine, rinse and repeat. It's Monday, next thing you know, it's Friday, and rinse and repeat. But if you have a jarring event, that's like, even for the pandemic did this for a lot of people. It forced people to pause. It forced people to have to sit with themselves. They couldn't escape anymore, even with their partner. So, I mean, sometimes I'm sure some of those relationships ended because of that, but that's a whole nother story.
True. Absolutely true.
That's a whole nother story. But I saw a lot of people who changed their life during that time. And it's because they had no other choice, because they had to be still. They had to just sit. And so the question is, how do we change ourselves? It's different for everyone, but oftentimes pain, some type of obstacle that really affects you, is usually the greatest teacher that's going to force you. A lot of times we have to be forced into changing. I hate that, but that's usually what it is. Think about, a lot of times people are going to go see a doctor when they're sick. They're not going to go to the doctor. It's like, hey, doctor, I'm coming to see. I just want to keep preventing. I just want to stay on top of my insulin and my glucose and check. You know what? I think it's time to get a CAC score. Yeah, let's do that real quick. Let me check my cholesterol while we're at it. They're not going to do that. They're going to do it when the check engine light comes on. That's when they're like, oh, okay. And then you even have some people like, well, it's just a check engine light. I could probably still go a little longer, right? So their car has to completely break down. Then they'll try to do something.
Correct.
So, but in a nutshell, for change to happen, usually there has to be some type of catalyst internally that no one else can give for us. And we're each driven and motivated and inspired by totally different things. And I think that's just something that you just learn from yourself. And you just learn. Some people are motivated to prove a point to others. Some people are driven by maybe their family and stuff. It's so many different variables right there. But pain is typically at the catalyst of getting that started in some form or fashion. Just like when I started to work out, the pain wasn't a physical pain, but it was more of like an emotional pain of, I want to be more attractive to women. I want to feel more comfortable and have more muscles and feel more manly, et cetera, and et cetera. Right? That was my pain. So it's some type of pain.
And that is the vast majority. Because unfortunately, yes, we are simple animals, really, as humans. We are driven by pleasure and pain, and most of us do not come off the hamster wheel until something happens. And that's a shame, but it is us human beings. Having said that, once is actually a really nice thing that you're forced off the hamster wheel when something happens, because it gives you time to reflect. It forces you to reflect on the path that you're on. And that is the most powerful position to be in. You actually realize that you've got a privilege of choice there and then. You can choose what you want to do. You can choose to live a new life where you take dramatic change. For example, have a glass of water. Now, for some people, that's a dramatic change in their life. Yet, okay, so once you've learned that maybe in the morning and the evening, have another glass of water. Wow, what a concept. And you actually stick with it. You actually have improved your hydration by 1 liter a day. And you actually suddenly realize, if you're hand on heart, honest to yourself, I actually feel a bit better. This low-grade headache is gone. Weird. Dramatic change, a glass of water in my ass. Yet you've made a change, but you've made your first change. Now to actually add another little change to it. Maybe I now park the car just a little bit further away and actually walk towards where I need to go. And then I don't take the lift, but I might actually walk 2 stories up, and even then take the lift. Okay, whatever. If you need to go 32 floors up, well, maybe you don't want to walk. But hey, and again, you've made a change. So it's little changes, but they very soon give you compound interest. And that's the cool thing. And
exactly. Yeah, exactly. You nail on the coffin right there. Those, it's depositing, $5, saving $5, then $10, it becomes 15, 20, and it quickly amplifies. And what you notice over time is when you start building up one positive habit, it just seems like there's a snowball effect. And then everything else in life just starts to get better. You're like, well, I'm adding this water. I got a little more energy. I feel a little better about myself. And then you just start to notice that your relationships are better. And then you notice that my work is much better as well. Wow. And it started with just choosing a glass of water in the morning over coffee at first. Still having my coffee, but maybe I'll hydrate first.
Exactly. And so here we are. So guys, we have already led you onto a path of being a new, improved human being with a glass of water. You think, oh, come on, everyone says that. My answer to that is, so why are you not doing it? Exactly. And why are people not doing it? I mean, everyone knows you should drink 3 liters of water a day. Why don't they?
Once again, I think if the effects of not drinking water has not been affected. See, for me, I had this at an early age. I saw what happens if your health is not a priority. And so I could feel that pain, because pain is not just physical, it's emotional. You can feel the stress. You can see the stress on all your loved ones. You can see what that does. So for me, I got an up close picture of that. And so it's easy to feel disconnected, to think, oh, these things cannot happen to me if you've not been around it, if you've not felt none of these things. So maybe it's just not at the forefront of your mind yet. Just like you would think, how does someone gain 20, 30 pounds? Well, it's easy. You don't feel it at first until you do feel it. If I go through the holiday season, perhaps, let's say I put on 7 pounds, and then I get on my New Year's kick, I get 3 of those off. And then over the course of the year, that's 4 pounds from last year. I do it again the next year, 7 more pounds, but maybe I only get 2 this time. Wow, that adds up. And then just one day you're like, wow, I am 15, 20 pounds overweight and I cannot fit into these outfits. How did this happen? It happens so slow. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. It's like being at a dam. There's a small little crack. No big deal. Let's leave it alone. The crack gets just a little bit bigger. No big deal. Next time I come to dam, a bigger crack, it's leaking. Next thing I know, it explodes, and now there's a flood. These things are it's the slight edge. There's a great book I read by Jeff Olson called The Slight Edge. And it's the smallest, tiniest habits make the biggest differences. It's the difference between reading 10 pages a day and not reading 10 pages a day, and what that does to your personal development. It's the same thing as, I don't know, saving $10 a week and not saving $10 a week. And the compound interest, like you mentioned, over time makes a huge difference. The difference between exercising 4 times a week compared to not. You may not feel these habits and notice them, good or bad, at the beginning. But over time, as you keep doing these things, one group is going to have that trajectory go up, and the other group is going to have that trajectory go down. But at the very beginning, it seems we're all on the same plane. But then only through time will we see the separation.
I love that you said that, because change is guaranteed. I guarantee you change. You can like it, you can hate it, it doesn't matter. Change will happen. And your trajectory either is determined by you or determined by other factors. So you can be active, you can be passive. If you're active, if you're trying to be in control of your ship, you will, to a degree, determine where you're sailing to. Now, okay, the wind might push you off your path, but having said that, you're still sort of dealing with it. If you're completely in a passive state and disregard your own power of being part of that change, the change will still happen, just not in a way that you like it. I can virtually guarantee you that. And that
Absolutely.
is yeah. So you are getting bigger, you are getting sicker, you are getting older, and that doesn't need to be.
Yeah. This thing called maintenance. I have a problem when people I'm on maintenance mode. I just can't conceptualize what does maintenance mode mean, because to me, you're improving in some capacity or you're not improving. What does this mean that we just stay in the middle at the same? Because life doesn't really do that. If you think about it, life is moving on. So are you getting better in life, or are you decreasing? And so I think maintenance is Oh, I don't know. I just don't like that word. And maybe that's the athlete in me.
I like
It
that.
seems like that's a word for being content and malaise. And that's a slippery slope with me. But maybe I'm paranoid. I did read a book a long time ago called Only the Paranoid Survive. So I don't know.
Nothing wrong. Only because you're paranoid doesn't mean that they are not out there to get you. Okay. So no. It's good to be paranoid. It's good to question your motivation. It's good for you to question what is going on in your life. Because only if you show an awareness of that, can you actually then modify the factors that are actually pushing you one way or the other. Now, they might push you in the right way, in which case you might as well use them as fuel to get to where you actually desire to be deep down there, who you wish to become. If the factors forcing you, regardless if it is pain or pleasure for you to get there, hey, go for it. The same factors will be around. They're pushing you one way or the other. You just need to figure out, okay, do you need to disarm those, take power away from these forces that are pushing you maybe to you being a person who you don't want to be, a human who you actually don't want to become. So it is a choice. You work on your recovery or you work on your relapse as an addict. The same is with regards to you as a human being. You work on your health, on your wealth, on achieving those things that truly put a grin on your face where you say, that was a good day. You're working on that, or you're working on the opposite. It's your choice. So,
absolutely.
Julian, you're so right there. And if you were to think, how can humans go the extra mile, i.e., in the sense of longevity now? I mean, yes, there's only so much you can get with hydration, good exercise, good nutrition. Are there next steps then thereafter? Let's say someone does this foundational work, does it for 3 months, 6 months, and gets quite hooked on it and said, hey, I like that. That's the new me. But then where to from there? What are the next steps in your mind?
Yeah, I like to then start, let's say if they haven't yet, start tracking and getting some, look into extensive lab work, look into, age testing. There's a great test from a company called True Age, and you can test your chronological age with your biological age. And you'll get a intrinsic and extrinsic number with that as well. And there's another good one called the glycan age. And these glycans are very important. They're essential building blocks to what makes us human. And here, a lot of times, if your glycans are high, it's almost like you have like a 7 to 8 year head start on something that could potentially show. That's how big the gap is. And so you're getting a 7 to 8 year thing. If your things are off, right, or a little bit of like, oh, okay, in 7 to 8 years, I could have this. And you're like, wow, that's a long time. It's hard to even comprehend 7 to 8 years ahead of time. If I don't do anything, this is what would happen. But now I have this thing, let me know. So I love to get all this data accumulated at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then you can start being even more precise by introducing various supplements, different interventions. Maybe you need to use something, different types of peptides. So if something like skin health, there's a whole world of stuff to optimize your skin. If it's the brain that needs optimization, sometimes like football players and athletes, that's a key area. And there's different cognitive tests for that as well. And so there's a little simple test, I think it's CNSVS, I forgot the name that I use. And it's just different computational tests that you use. And what they're doing is you're testing your cognitive speed, your cognitive abilities and different outputs. And it will categorize you based on your age, and you can keep up with that to see, okay, am I getting sharper more than what is expected or not? And if you are, then okay, why is my brain not working as well? Something simple nutritional wise is to really optimize your omega-3, omega-6 balance, because omega-3s are very important for the brain. And so how do I know if that's, well, there's omega-3 tests, there's blood work as well, and you can look at the ratio with that. And so you're stacking, you're getting more advanced, but not too advanced just yet, because you still have to eat. You're still going to eat healthy, but you're going to eat healthy, but you're going to eat in a more precise and intentional way. So just as myself, I need a lot more monounsaturated fats. So I have a heavy diet of monounsaturated fats. So like the oils I use very little saturated fat. Because I'm highly prone to inflammation. And so with my diet, it's tailored more toward that. And so those are a few things. And like the supplement regimen, it's just getting a lot more precise based on your unique biology. So take a deeper dive into what makes you uniquely you. And once you have that information, then you can start to pick and choose different areas to address. And it can be overwhelming when you have so much data, so much possibilities to choose from. So what I typically tell people to do is just to pick an area that interests you. If you're more into athletics and sports, then cater everything toward that right now. And then worry about the other areas later. If sleep is a big thing for you, let's look at everything through the lens of sleep. So one of the secrets to working with people is, even if I think they need to work on this particular area, if they don't think that, I don't typically say that, because if I tell them that, most people are like little kids. They're stubborn and don't want to be told what to do. So if they think that weight loss is the problem, I'm going to talk about everything through the lens of weight loss, because that's where they are. And so that's kind of how I want you to look at this. If everything is about weight loss for you, then I want you to think about your sleep through the lens of weight loss, which sleep plays a big part in that. I want you to think about exercise through the lens of weight loss. If it's about maybe preconception is a huge field that's growing even more now. And just how much epigenetics and really dialing in that period before conceiving can be in terms of the baby. If that's a priority, then do that. So wherever your curiosity leads you, tap into that. And then that will be all the inspiration that you need. It's a lot easier to be inspired and motivated when you care about the area. So for me, I operate personally, it's performance longevity. So I want longevity, but I still want to perform optimally well. I don't want to just say, some people are like longevity, but it's like, let me caloric restriction, let me not do these endurance sports and none of that. That's boring, because for me, I don't want to live, if I have to live in a bubble to make it to 120, that's not worth it, because then I'm missing out on experiences in life. So that's why for me, it's performance and longevity and meshing those two together. So it's kind of a long-winded answer, but basically after the foundations, start to track and gather a lot more data to see areas that maybe you need to address a little more than others. And then dial in your focus there, because there's peptides for everything. There's supplements for everything. There's so much stuff out there that it's easy to get overwhelmed. And it's easy to just pick all these things. And you're basically, using an investing term, you're diluting your portfolio. If you just invest in 100 different things, but barely put like $1 in each one, you're diluting it. So I don't want you to dilute this, because the downside that I see in the coming future in the health world, everyone's going to have these smart devices. Everyone's going to have access to order tests. But what do you do with all this data? And a lot of times, if we're overwhelmed by something, we're probably just going to turn a blind eye to it and we're going to avoid it. I don't want to look at it. Maybe it'll go away. The problem will go away, or this will go away if I just don't look at it, pretend it's not there. So that's why I really advise people to be very methodical and intentional with this approach here, because I want you to think about what's sustainable and you can do over the long time, because these things add up.
But it's taking action. There is when you invest, there is sometimes the analysis paralysis, where you want to learn more and do more and really focus on things, But what you don't do is you don't take action. You don't take the first step. You don't do a trial if you think that a certain cryptocurrency might be something you wanted to go for. Well, you can analyze until the cows come home, unless you actually buy it and then learn the lessons with it, then you won't get there. It's the same with your first real estate that you purchase, your property investor. You need to actually put a purchasing agreement in, and only then will you actually grow. It's those kind of things.
Skin in the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could I got into running over the last year as well, and you can read all you want about the ideal mindset and how to prepare for a 14-mile run, but until you're actually doing it and your feet is on the ground for a couple hours, and you're actually feeling it, that's different. There's theory and there's application. Just like I went to school, took a lot of tests, thought I knew a lot, but there's a difference between theory and actual application.
No, that's cool. But I guess the main point is we don't know what we don't know. So coming full circle now, ultimately, if you are new to this game, you can try out yourself and can give it a shot and can maybe buy some omega-3 fatty acids. Now, that's all quite cool. Or you actually try to find a tribe or try to find a mentor who can guide you and can actually streamline and fast track your approach rather than you reinventing the wheel. And I think that's such an important thing. Time is everything. Okay. Not time is money. No, time is everything. Because without, how should I say that without being morbid? Ultimately, there is a finite time for us to be on this earth. So you can choose to just bimble along, or you can choose to focus on using your time wisely and in a right way. So if you're interested in changing your health, find someone who actually has done it before. Why not model certain behaviors that are likely to give you the most feedback, the most positive rewards, rather than I'll give that a shot. Or maybe in 6 months I tried that. No, man. And that's where you need to find your tribe. Or indeed, if you gel with Julian and sort of see, hey, this kind of scientific kind of approach, that makes sense. And I like the dude. I mean, how can people find you? How does that work with you?
Yeah, the home base is the Art of Fitness and Life, and it would have everything that you could possibly need there. And you'll see links to the podcast. You'll see my email there. It's Julian at theartoffitnessandlife.com. And I'm a little better with social, but probably the email and the website's the best place to really get a hold of me.
Fantastic. And guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. It's all there, easy for you to get access to. And whilst you're down there, press the like and subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any other cool interviews that we are doing here with amazing people. And who knows, maybe your own story is actually a story of transformation and a story of change. And maybe it's time for you to tell your story. So just think about it. Even if it is not on my show here, maybe it is for you to start shining that light in the darkness that others need to see. Because we all are transforming, and some of us are transforming in a way that we think, wow, did I do that? Wow, okay. And it's a beautiful thing. So imagine if we can all encourage each other to become better human beings, if we foster that kind of mentality to say, well done for having made a mistake. That's fantastic, because now you're in a situation, you figured out what doesn't work. So now maybe let's focus on what does work. And would it not be cool? Maybe we can make this world a bit of a better place. I believe so. Julian believes so. That's the reason he is sitting here. Hey, that's already 2 out of 9 billion. Hey, so, let's start a snowball fight and let's see the avalanche going from here.
Everything starts with one. And
True.
that one is ourself.
Yeah.
And then that's how we start to amplify it. So nothing is too small, just like the glass of water we talked about.
Touche. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today. Look after yourself and live with passion. And to you, Julian, thank you so much for your time and effort and commitment to come onto my show. I had a ball of a time.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. And once again, that was an awesome introduction. And I really enjoyed this conversation. We got to really go beyond the typical surface material and really dive into the psychologies of changing and everything. So I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk about that.
Cool. You guys out there, look after yourself. Bye.